on an all-new Dr. Phil. Are you raising your children to be part of the hashtag poor me culture?
A person who stays in a victim mentality, they have the injured mindset. It's their identity.
The second you say that you're a victim, I'm vulnerable, who's going to argue with you?
These people are an insult to real victims.
It's about training our minds to respond by reason instead of react by reflex.
Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
This is a safe place to talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
Today is going to be a changing day in your life.
5, 4.
Get ready to take care of you. Well, across the nation, news media have been reporting on what many people are whispering under their breath in annoyed, hushed tones so no one could overhear. Why are there so many coddled and entitled adults making nonstop demands on the rest of us so we can tiptoe around their fragile egos? Have y'all been reading, hearing this, or are you the whisperers? Well, I ain't a whisperer. Some of the headlines tell it all. The rise of victimhood culture. Are you raising your children to be part of the hashtag poor me culture? And why modern moms are raising victims. I mean, the victim mentality seems to be everywhere, at home, in schools, workplaces, stores, on the street. You name the location, and there seems to be some whiner with a woe-is-me attitude complaining about what is wrong, who did them wrong, and what needs to be changed. But critics say, hold up, wait a minute, you don't know what type of pain and trauma another person is dealing with. Well, that's true. And I want to be clear from the start, no one is blaming the victim or victim shaming here. What we're doing is taking a closer look at the dangers that oversensitivity, negative thinking, and entitlement pose for our society. How can we prevent the category of victim from being co-opted by whiners, complainers, or people who are simply stuck and refuse to take accountability for their own actions? Let's kick off the conversation with Sam, a skateboarder and recent college graduate who is currently living in his van with his kitten. He's not working and wonders how he is expected to remain positive when bad things just seem to happen to him all the time. Take a look.
My name's Sam, I'm 24. I live in my van and travel with my cat, Callie. This is my little mobile home. I got a little stove, fridge right here. Since I was a teenager, it seemed like there's been a lot of unfortunate events. When I was 13, my brother and sister went off to college, and it was the first time that I'd ever felt depression. In high school, I had some horrible panic attacks and was being bullied, and then my best friend passed away. The panic attacks, they turned into these fits of rage. And I told my parents, if you don't let me leave, I'm gonna burn this school to the ground. When I was in high school, they ended up prescribing me lorazepam. Over the next couple of years, I started abusing them. I was walking home one night, some homeless dude, and he just threw me over and split my head open. 2 weeks ago, I was riding an electric skateboard. It just locked up. And I was thrown onto my head and neck. And then about 3 days ago, started to feel like I was gonna throw up. And by the time I got to the hospital, I was having a really bad seizure. They did nothing. They discharged me about an hour later. I graduated from Portland State University last winter, but I don't think I can work with a head injury like this. I've put into words that I felt like I don't fit into this country. Dr. Phil, do you have any advice on how to keep a healthy attitude towards life when traumatic events just keep repeating?
Okay, so we're waiting on Sam. Where's Sam? I didn't come here to wait for Sam. So Sam's going to have to wait for us. He's either going to join the show or he's not. I was told that the music was too loud, so he had to go somewhere quiet. So he's down the hall somewhere quiet. But in the meantime, I I got some things I want to talk about, and I think you guys are going to want to talk about them. So joining us in the audience are Pastor James Ward, author of Zero Victim, Overcoming Injustice with a New Attitude, and trauma therapist Shannon Maroney, author of Through the Glass. Now, they both say the victim mindset is unacceptable. So, Pastor, Shannon, thank you guys for being here. Wasn't too noisy for you?
Not at all. No.
Okay, you
Thanks
got
for
through it
having us.
okay?
Yeah. Great to be here.
Yeah.
Feeling great.
All right, well, I'm glad you're here. So, tell me what your theory about this is. You disagree with this victim mentality completely.
Well, first of all, Dr. Phil, you know, victimization is a part of life. We're never in denial of the unfortunate circumstances that happen in life. I say, unfortunately, that life is perfectly designed to make victims out of all of us. Even though victimization is inevitable, victimhood is optional. It is something that we participate in. In other words, victim mentality is a present state of mind based upon something that happens in the past that affects the trajectory of our future. And we have to make a concerted effort and an intentional decision in the moment, in the present, to change the trajectory of our future. Folks who deal with victim mentality, they see themselves in an I lose frame of reference, a frame of mind that says, I'm the recipient of the negative thoughts, words, actions, or injustices of people or circumstances around me. And we have to deny those things the right and the opportunity to define the remainder of our lives. And that's what the zero victim premise is all about. It's about regaining control of our lives and empowering people to not continue to live as victims. Never denying the victimization, but it denies the victimization the right and the authority to define our lives for the remainder of our lives.
Life is not a success-only journey, right?
Correct.
So somewhere along the way, we're going to get dinged up. But how we react to that is really what determines how our life's going to go. We have a choice about that. That's what you're saying. We can't change what's happened, but we do have a choice about how we react to it.
That's correct. There's a very important distinction that has to be made between reaction and response. Life is filled with circumstances that are stimulus or effect. We can't avoid those. But zero victim thinking is training our minds to respond by reason instead of react by reflex. There's a space in between. After that stimulus, there's a space where growth and freedom is determined based upon whether or not we react by reflex or respond by reason. The best case scenario with the zero victim mindset is to respond by reason by reflex. To respond by reason by reflex. And it's something that we can condition our hearts and our minds and temper our minds. As we say sometimes, the water around the boat is not what brings the boat down, it's the water that gets on the inside. We can deny those circumstances and negative experiences from getting inside us.
But that's a conscious choice that we have to commit to. I mean, all of us do. Now, Shannon, you say the victim mindset is unacceptable, and you believe that trauma can be used to actually strengthen.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I don't exactly say that the victim mindset is unacceptable. I think it's actually can be important to recognize and have self-compassion when very bad things happen to you. At the same time, you just can't get stuck there. What I have learned about being a victim and someone who's experienced major trauma is that exactly as you say, we don't have a choice about what other people say or do to us, about us. We only have a choice about how we're going to respond. And my choice, following the major trauma that happened to me at age 30 when my first husband, well, I was away at a counseling conference.
And you're in a hotel. I
was in a hotel.
Phone rings.
Phone rang, and it was actually a colleague of mine and said, can I bring someone up to your room? And I actually thought, oh, maybe it's my high school guidance counselor. I was a high school guidance counselor. I thought, oh, cool, that'll be great. But when the knock came to the door and I answered the door, it was a police officer. And you see a car, you see an officer and you think, car accident. And the officer said, I'm not here because someone has died. I'm here about your husband. Are you Jason Staples' wife? And we'd been married for exactly a month. And I said, yes, I'm Jason Staples' wife. And he said, Jason was arrested last night He has committed some very serious crimes of sexual assault, and he's in custody. He carried them into the basement in garbage bags and in the basement of our home. When I learned this, just was overcome with such intense helplessness. I remember thinking, please let something of mine have comforted them.
And later, will Sam return to the stage and confront his own inactions and victim mindset? Or is this another example of things just not going his way? Well, stay tuned and find out. He had actually seriously assaulted 2 women.
He first assaulted them. At that time, the officer wouldn't tell me very many details. I found them out later. He had been working where he worked at a local health food store. He was a new graduate of art school, earned straight A's and had a great career out of him. And he assaulted 2 customers who came into the store, one after the other. They didn't know each other. They didn't know him. He didn't know them. And then he confined them to the basement of the store. He had ridden his bike to work that day, and then he called, I guess he was trying to figure out, it wasn't a plan, that very much was clear. He called a rental company and rented a van, and he took them to our home, which was very close by. He carried them into the basement in garbage bags, and in the basement of our home, they bravely talked to him, tried to bring him back to a place of humanity. When I learned this, I had just was overcome with such intense helplessness. I remember thinking, please let something of mine have comforted them. I had painted the walls of the basement yellow the summer before, and it was just so futile. But they did a very good job in bringing him back. They engaged him with photos on the wall. Is that your wife or girlfriend? And then I also phoned him, and he answered the phone. That night I called from the conference to prattle on about my day and tell him how wonderful it had been, and tell him that I loved him and that I thought I might be pregnant. And after my phone call, he left our house and went down to the bottom of the hill where we lived, and he called 911. And he told the police who he was and what he'd done, and he asked them to come and rescue the women from our home.
Okay, and this wasn't the first time he had done this?
He had never committed a sexual assault before, but when he was 18 years old, he had committed a murder, and that was 18 years prior.
He committed a murder? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so at that point, you're feeling like this is a cloud over your life.
I looked out the hotel room window. I was in Toronto, where I live now, and it was an airport hotel, and I saw all the airplanes just taking off and the highways, everything, the world still was going. But the glass in front of me, I mean, we have a lot of winter driving where I live. And when a stone flies up and hits your windshield, you just have a split second to think, maybe the whole thing won't crack. And then you watch that silent snaking of the cracks, and you are so helpless, and you know you can never change what just happened. And that's what I saw. And that day, I went from being, I had titles I was proud of: good neighbor, respected professional and counselor, a volunteer in my community, a new homeowner. And the next day, I was the wife of a sex offender. Wow. And the shame and stigma and horror and the trauma of what he had done and how he could do it, especially, I think, because he had been given a second chance. And I had become the biggest part of that second chance that he would have. Yeah. It was horrifying, and there were a lot of choices that I had to find and make for myself. So, you know, to be really, really practical, and one of the choices I made, and this might sound silly, but it saved my life, I decided couldn't go back to my house for a few days. It had to be searched and so on. And when I got to go back to my home, first of all, I decided that that is the house where 3 lives were saved. That night could have been a double homicide-suicide.
Yeah.
And it wasn't.
Because we know that was within his behavioral repertoire.
It was.
So we know that.
Yeah, and so I went back and I stayed at home. And I mean, the judgment began right away. I wasn't given a map about what to do at all. But lots of people thought they knew what I should do and so on, and all of that happened. But I decided for myself that every single day I was going to get out of bed and get dressed and put on my earrings. And I did that every single day, except for one. And that was the day that my job was taken away from me. And I was treated as guilty by association. And every other day, till today, I get up and put my earrings on.
Well, so do you or someone you know exhibit the 3 types of victimhood without knowing it? Well, we're going to find out next and differentiate when someone has really been victimized, really been hurt, and those who are just way oversensitive. We'll be right back. If you get a cold, are you inclined to say to yourself, well, I must not have really taken very good care of myself, or, wow, not my fault. I just got blasted by the virus that's going around, and I hate that. What do you think it says about you to say one versus the other? We've been talking about victim mentality, which seems to be a growing trend in today's world. I have a few questions for you guys in the audience. Let me ask you this. Most everybody gets a cold, right, from time to time. If you get a cold, are you inclined to say to yourself, well, I must not have really taken very good care of myself. I got run down, I exposed myself to things I shouldn't have or whatever? Or are you more inclined to say, wow, there's just a bunch of this going around and it just hammered me and it's not my fault. I just got blasted by the virus that's going around and I hate that. So with those 2 choices, how many of you would say, man, it's just out there and it hammered me, there was nothing I could do about it? Raise your hands. How many of you would say, well, no, I just kind of ran myself down, didn't take very good care of myself, and so I got a cold? Raise your hand. Raise it real high so you can see it. What do you think it says about you to say one versus the other? Right here.
Well, I answered that I must have just not been taking very good care of myself. I think that having that mentality is very much like taking responsibility for maybe your actions. Like maybe I haven't gotten enough sleep. Maybe I've been working too hard. Maybe I've been going out a lot and I haven't been like taking the necessary precautions. That would be very much taking responsibility of both myself and my own health and my own actions.
And raise your hand if you agree with that again. Okay, gotcha. All right. All right, let me ask you this. Let's say you're in school and you take a test and you do really well. I mean, you go look at your grade and you go, wow. Are you more inclined to say, I was really well prepared? Raise your hand. Are you more inclined to say, whoa, that was easy? Raise your hand.
It was easy.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, a lot of you say easy. A lot of you say I was really well prepared. Okay. What's the difference?
I don't know. I think that, like, if you just think that I did well because I was really prepared, but if you, like, fail, then you're more likely to say, well, the test was really hard. I think it's just making yourself feel better with the amount of effort you put in to make it seem like I did the right thing regardless of the outcome.
So if you did well, you would take credit for it. If you did bad, it was the test.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, no, gotcha. All right, that's helpful. That's what I want to know.
Many people might not think of this as narcissism, but this is narcissism, and that's a quieter form where you feel not entitled to special privileges because you're superior, but because you've suffered in the past.
Do you think that's happening more now than it was when you started studying on it 10 years ago?
It's a really good question.
Closed captioning provided by...
How do I love thee? Let me count the ways.
Love can get a little messy. Good thing there's Resolve. Love the love, resolve the mess.
4 delicious pieces of chocolate. 3 crisp wafers. 2 layers of sweet Kit Kat filling. 1 incredible break. Have a break. Have a Kit Kat. Now served up in birthday cake.
Now, Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman is a cognitive scientist and humanistic psychologist. He's a professor at Columbia University and founder and director of the Center for the Human Potential. And Dr. Scott is taught at Columbia University, Yale, New York University, and the University of Pennsylvania. His 2020 article for the Scientific American titled Unraveling the Mindset of Victimhood was really popular. It got a lot of pickup, was really well read. His latest book is Choose Growth, a workbook for transcending trauma, fear, and self-doubt. So, Dr. Scott, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing all right. So what do you think about this victimhood concept? You told my team that you've been studying victimhood for 10 years, and you think it's linked in some ways to vulnerable narcissism.
Yeah.
Explain what you mean.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because when a lot of people think of narcissism, they think of the chest-thumping narcissist who says, I'm great, I'm superior. But many people might not think of this as narcissism, but this is narcissism, and that's a quieter form where you feel not entitled to special privileges because you're superior, but you feel entitled to special privileges because you've suffered in the past. And that's the only reason why you feel like you're entitled to special privileges. And that's called vulnerable narcissism. I've been studying that for the past 10 years within the context of how we can help people self-actualize and grow and become their best self. And this is in data set after data set after data set. This shows to be the #1 inhibitor of well-being in life. If you can't forgive, if you take everything personally, if you
dwell on it,
etc. If you dwell on it, you ruminate on it. It's called intrusive rumination, not productive rumination. You go down the list, it's like the best, you know, like the list. You couldn't design a better list of things to be unhappy in your life, and the people around you are not too happy with you either.
Yeah. Do you think that's happening more now than it was when you started studying on it 10 years ago?
It's a really good question. I think that, especially in the political domain, people aren't listening to each other. And everyone's a victim. There's victim, you know, everyone I talk to and I talk about vulnerable narcissism, they say, oh, that's the other side that you're talking about. And no one ever looks in the mirror about this.
Well, nobody wants to see this in themselves, but it's interesting to me that clearly some of this is genetics, some of it is environment, but we are seeing people that are actually medicalizing words and actions of other people that weren't doing this 20 or 30 years ago. They're on campus saying, I don't feel safe because of what you're saying.
I think it's being rewarded more now than it's ever been in the history of humanity. I think it's being rewarded. You have social media that rewards it. You can use it as even power plays. You can go on, and the second you say that you're a victim, the second you say, you know, I'm vulnerable, who's gonna, like, say, argue with you, right? Like, you come across as I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word on TV, but you come across as if you say to someone, you know, who says, I'm a victim, I'm suffering, and you say, actually, you need to, like, learn some skills of life here, you know, you come across to say that, right? So I do think you're actually being rewarded more nowadays for saying it.
I want to add someone else to this conversation. We're going to talk to a daughter who says her mother has a negative attitude and a victim mentality. We'll find out what she means when we get back. We've been talking about the rise of victimhood culture. Now, we're not talking about true victims who have every right to speak up. Now, Kelsey reached out to me seeking advice for her mom, Kelly, who she says has struggles, like most people do, but also has a negative attitude and a victim mentality. Now, Kelsey and Kelly are joining us virtually, and also joining virtually from a different location is Kelsey's sister and Kelly's younger daughter, Megan. So hello to the three of you.
Hello.
Hello.
Kelsey, let me start with you. Tell me what you think is going on here.
So unfortunately, I think that I get wrapped up in titles. You know, I hear victim, and I know my mom's perception of that is that she's not a victim. And she has had some trauma, and she won't accept that she has had trauma. People have had worse things happen to them, so she can't believe that this bad thing may be created the way that she thinks. And I think since my dad's passing in 2018, she feels guilty that she shouldn't be happy.
Kelly, are you playing a victim role? Both your daughters said all of their lives you caution them about don't ever feel sorry for yourself and play the victim. Get out and create the life that you want. And they say that you're doing exactly what you told them not to do.
I agree. I just feel like, I don't feel like I'm a victim, but I do see a negative point of view that I come across that way.
Right. Megan, why do you think she's not seeing what the two of you are seeing?
Because it's hard to look at yourself like that.
What is it that they want for you that you're not doing?
I think what it is because they see me as an unhappy person, because sometimes I just want to stay home because maybe I'm spending too much time at work and not enough time to go out and enjoy my stuff, because I gained a lot of weight, so I hamper myself in doing the things that I used to love doing with the kids.
Would you rather they just left you to your own devices and let you do what you wanted to do?
No, I mean, I understand what they're getting to. You know, they want me healthy. They lost their father, so they don't want to lose their mother. But it's just getting into my mindset that I need to do stuff for myself first, which I put the kids first, and that's probably where I'm struggling.
Yeah, well, you can't take care of them if you don't take care of yourself.
She does have so much love to give, and she loves everybody that she surrounds herself with. I just fear that she doesn't love herself as much as we love her.
I agree.
Is your husband's death keeping you where you don't give yourself permission to be happy?
Well, you know, he was an alcoholic, so I had to deal with his alcoholism. And then when he went into treatment, I was always told to, when he makes a call and say, hey, I'm ready to come out, come get me, I wouldn't fall for those tricks. And sure enough, after a month, he said, yep, I'm done, come get me. And so I did. And it's like, well, you know, maybe he would have left on his own, but you feel guilty for that. And then when he was having a cardiac arrest, I stopped the CPR in progress and told him not to do it anymore because it was pointless at that point.
Well, you've been a nurse since you were 18, so maybe you made the right decision. But whatever it is, that was then, this is now.
Correct.
And you can't change it. So, Pastor, what would you say?
You know, perspective is everything. And one of the characteristics of victim thinking works like a set of lenses. When you literally get to a point because of past traumatic experiences, moral injuries, victimizations, it works like a set of lenses when you literally begin to read victimization into your circumstances and you see it everywhere. Imagine for a moment right now, if I'm wearing a dark set of lenses, I would sit here and complain about it being dark in the room and it's perfectly bright. It's dark for me. My perspective is dark because I'm wearing a set of lenses. And until we learn how to change the lenses to put on a zero victim set of lenses, we'll continue to read victimization into each and every circumstance that we face in life. And again, the challenge with that is that it sets a trajectory for the remainder of our lives. And we find ourselves in a position living in a way that's less than ideal and abdicating the responsibility of creating the future that we really desire to experience.
Well, we'll talk more about this in a minute. I'm going to tell you some things that might help you change your mentality about this. Some of us were set up for this. We were set up to see life through this kind of a lens, but that doesn't mean we have to continue down that road. We'll be right back. You know, we've been talking about the rise of victimhood culture, and culture is the operative word here. Historically, victim was defined as one who is injured or destroyed or sacrificed under any of various conditions. And of course, there are undisputed, or what I call real physical victims of circumstances, totally outside anyone's control. These victims of circumstance don't necessarily have common personality traits. They were just simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I wouldn't even be talking to you about this if boundaries of what constituted being victimized stopped there. But it did not. Many, in my opinion, hijacked or appropriated the term, and that is who I'm talking about today. These people are an insult to real victims. Victims of natural disasters, victims of godless atrocities such as the Holocaust. And by the way, misery is not a strategy. Taking personal responsibility, strategic planning, goal-directed behavior is the cure to feelings of victimization. It empowers you, which is the opposite of being a victim. Look, life is going to deal bad hands from time to time. Sometimes it'll be earned, sometimes exquisitely unfair, but I believe in the principle of reciprocity. You get what you give. If I'm being insensitive, well, that's been suggested from time to time. But I think real compassion extends beyond the shoulder to cry on. It's hard to resist helping someone who refuses to be defined by the opinions of others and takes responsibility for their own well-being. You know, I've been heard to say it's time for people to put some verbs in their sentences and realize that we create our own experience.
Yeah, I don't like this idea that there are real victims and then there are like the faker victims. You know, I think you can be a real victim, have a lot of victimization, and also have a victim mentality at the same time. They're not like either-or situations.
I think none of us are responsible for what happens to us as a child, but I think we're 100% accountable for what we do about it as an adult. What you choose today, thank God, is up to you. But I think it's an insult to someone to not hold them responsible for doing everything they can do.
I'm glad you brought up the idea of helping. You know, the thing is that, yes, of course, when we become adults, we are responsible for ourselves, but we often just need help to do that. And one of my beliefs is that mental health care should be as basic as going to a doctor for anything else, you know, is to have that help and support to find the way forward. And that's what we deserve.
Support is provided, but they don't know the path to get there.
Of course.
Exactly.
They don't know how to course correct.
She probably doesn't even know that.
And they don't have the environment around them to teach them that.
Yeah.
You know, so some of us come up in the mentality and we have the environment and the support system around us that says, you can do it.
Yeah.
Here's steps that you can do to get to the other side.
Yeah.
Here's, you know, some numbers or, you know, to call for therapy or, you know, websites to go and look into. Like, they know how to lay out the plan. And then there's other people that come up environments that didn't have that around them at all. Don't take our business outside of the house. Don't talk to a therapist about this. Keep it in your chest and move forward. And so how do you, in that case, Dr. Phil, when a person is not given the tools and they don't come up in that environment, how do they then course correct and seek help as an adult?
Well, that's about overcoming stigma and get people to understand that it takes strength to acknowledge that you need help. We're going to come back and talk to these three up here, and I'm going to ask Sam here what he's been absorbing listening to all of this. We'll be right back. Sam says every time he tries to do something, life throws him a curveball.
Yeah.
Now, you were going to come out at the beginning when we got here, and you said it was too loud and too bright?
I felt like I was having a seizure, or I was going to, and it was having a really hard time breathing, and felt like I was going to throw up, so I just walked off. I just hope I can recover fast and start working and just get on to the next thing, really.
Yeah, you heard me say that what's important is, having some goals, having a plan, working on those things. And I think it's great to surround yourself with people that want you to succeed.
Yeah, and it's not as easy as that sounds, especially with a history of drug abuse. You've naturally pushed everyone away in your life, and you don't have a lot of good people in your life. And that's...
Yeah, it doesn't have to be easy. It just has to be doable.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And
I look forward to that day where there's a better support system.
And we've been talking about all of this. What do you think about all
I
this?
would like to look at what victimhood culture is. And when we look at that, I look at it as a frame to describe the entitlement of people to publicly express their rage, their fear, their pain when it's been invoked by intended or unintended microaggressions, jokes even, or behavior that happens from people in ways that they think is unacceptable. And listening to the stories of trauma that you've shared and stories of trauma that you have shared as well, there's been this question around what is a real victim versus what is not a real victim. When I look at it, it's not about the trauma itself so much as it is about the response to it. But the distinction is a person who stays in a victim mentality, they have the injured mindset, they see the world through the lens of their pain and of their trauma. And when a person is in an injured mindset, it's who they are, it's their identity. It's, if I may, it's you saying, I hope that something like this doesn't happen again, or I hope that I can, get through this. There are always going to be situations and circumstances that happen, but it is for you to find what is that level of resilience that I have within me? What are the characteristics that this circumstance has built up within me that I can now use to get through anything, no matter what it is? And you begin to love yourself, you begin to trust yourself, and know that regardless of the situations, regardless of the circumstances, I have the tools, I have the resources, I have the voice, I have the ear to be able to listen and also articulate my need.
That's so well put.
Wow.
Kelly, let me ask you, at this stage of the game, are you interested in setting goals for yourself and creating a different experience in your life?
Yes. I want to be happy, and I want to learn how to listen to my children.
Well, when I look at this screen in front of me right here, I see several things. Number one, you've obviously made a lot of good choices as a mother that are reflected in these two beautiful, bright young women here that are engaged in your life, obviously love their mother and want the best for you. And the difference between a dream and a goal is a timeline and some identifiable steps, because I don't think they want to let you get away with doing this someday. Because I've looked on my calendar, and someday is not a day of the week.
Today.
Yeah, I think they want you to do it. And I just want to get you to get unstuck. Inertia is the tendency for bodies at rest to remain at rest. And I think emotionally and personally, your life's a little inert, and they want you to get in motion. And so I think the three of you should work on that. And I would love to get you some professional help in that regard, just for you personally, privately. And I can do that just on your own schedule from your own home by connecting you with a personal therapist through Doctor On Demand, which is a company my son and I started. It's a telemedicine company that you can talk to someone from your own home and let them help you work out a plan to get going, and let you talk about any of the things you feel like you need to give a voice to, and put those things in their proper perspective and help you make an action plan. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
You'll take that help?
You betcha.
All right. I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay.
All right. Well, listen, we're out of time today. I thank everybody for their contributions today. Doctor, thank you for being here. You guys, listen, everybody has really contributed to this. If you at home want your own Doctor on Demand, it's a company that my son Jay and I started some years ago. Just go to Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, download the Doctor on Demand app. For more information about today's episode, or if you'd like to share your story, log on to drphil.com. If you want to add your voice to the conversation, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to my podcast, Fill in the Blanks, where I provide critical information on some of the most important issues that you're facing today in your life, in society, whatever. Also, listen to Robin's podcast, I've Got a Secret with Robin McGraw. She talks to some real thought leaders and innovators, really interesting people from different walks of life. It's a real smorgasbord of personalities and innovators. You can check them both out on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.